WWE presented its Crown Jewel show yesterday from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Today, as I speak, they are taping an episode of Raw from Riyadh. So we've got another taped show tomorrow night. It was all about crowning the first ever men's and women's Crown Jewel champions, and out of it, on the men's side, we got a really good match. On the women's side, we did not. Cody Rhodes became only the second man to pin Gunther on the main roster in the main event to win the Crown Jewel title. And since SmackDown got the win there, Raw got the win in the other match, with Liv Morgan beating Nia Jax. While Solo Sikoa got a, I would say shocking, but much-needed win over Roman Reigns in the Bloodline versus Bloodline match, which sets the stage now for War Games. Sami Zayn also made an appearance to further the storyline there as well. Randy Orton and Kevin Owens never even got out of the gate. It ended up as a brawl and not a match. So there was no finish, it just ended. Seth Rollins and Bronson Reed had a really good match, as did LA Knight, Andrade, and Carmelo Hayes, the second best on the entire show. The women's four-way match on SmackDown Friday night, they had one member from each team. Got me really interested in the full four-way match on this show, but the match on SmackDown ended up being better than the one at Crown Jewel. On the whole, though, look, with three really good matches, I can't go thumbs down on this show. But I also can't sit here and give it an enthusiastic thumbs up either. It just wasn't very interesting. The Twitter poll I put up with over 2,000 votes, last I checked, it had it 55 up, 44 down. I would say 60-40 sounds about right for the show. They opened with the Bloodline match because the heels were going over and they wanted to save Cody's win for the end so that he could pose with Paul Levesque and all the other dignitaries with their big new belt. It was Roman Reigns, Jimmy Uso, and Jey Uso against Solo Sikoa, Jacob Fatu, and Tama Tonga, with Tonga Loa the odd man out. No surprise there. I liked how they gave Jey his own entrance, separate from Roman and Jimmy, and they let Jey come out last. It made him feel like a bigger deal. I mean, even Cody didn't get to come out after Roman when they tagged together a Bad Blood. On SmackDown, Jey told Roman that he would only go along with this if Roman treated him as an equal. And he was not going to take orders from him. He was not going to be his right hand anymore. So during the match, when Roman wanted the tag, Jey tagged Jimmy instead. And Corey Graves explained that it was Jey testing Roman to see how he would react, to show him that he wasn't just going to go along with whatever he wants. And I like that. Roman spent most of the match out on the apron waiting for the hot tag. It was every Bloodline tag match that you've ever seen. Nothing really great about it. But the finish was a shock, and it was the right finish. Solo put down Roman with a Samoan spike and had him pinned. But Jimmy broke it up at the last minute. It actually looked like he was late on the save. He pulled a Tonga Loa here, and the referee had to hold up his count. Then the referee got bumped when Roman pulled Tama into the ring. Fatu put Roman down with his step-up moonsault, and then Solo put Roman down with two more Samoan spikes, and he pinned him clean in the middle of the ring. So in all, it took 3 Samoan spikes, but it took 2 back-to-back to put down Roman Reigns, and he needed that win. Solo Sikoa has been a loser since SummerSlam. He needed that win, and pinning Roman was absolutely the right call there. The Bloodline had to win this anyway, the new Bloodline, to give them a purpose to run it back for War Games. And so they all ganged up on Roman and Jimmy and Jey after the match until Sami Zayn ran out to make the save for Jey Uso. Solo wanted Sami to join with them. Last we saw them on Raw last week, they were having a conversation outside the arena. Zayn ended up dropping him with an exploder, and they all swarmed him, and here comes the OG Bloodline to Sami's aid, and now Solo is left all alone in the middle of the ring. You got Roman in one corner, Jimmy in another, Jey in another, and Sami in another. Roman goes for a Superman punch. At the same time that Sami came charging in with the haluva kick, Solo ducks it, and so Sami knocks out Roman instead. And then Jimmy got in Sami's face, "What are you doing?" Jey tried to calm things down. I love in all of these situations in wrestling, I always love how, as the viewer, we're watching this, and it's so clear that it was a mistake, right? It's so clear they were trying to target Solo Sikoa. He just moved out of the way. Sami didn't mean to hit Roman, but you get Jimmy standing there like, "What are you doing? How can you do this?" And you're like, all right. You're seeing the same thing we're seeing, brother, but I get it. I get it. You got to dumb it down here in wrestling. It's just funny to me. So Jay tried to defuse the situation. Now we've got even more tension in the ranks here. And they've got another 4 weeks to right the ship and get everybody on the same page if they're going to team up at Survivor Series. So, I mean, I thought the angle was a thumbs up. As far as the match, again, the match was good, but I wouldn't say it was anything more than that. Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill. They remain the women's tag team champions. They beat out Lash Legend and Shakara Jackson, Chelsea Green and Piper Niven, and Damage Control. I thought the 4-way preview on SmackDown was better than the actual title match. It wasn't bad. It actually got pretty good there in the last few minutes. But, again, it was a match that was only thrown together a week ago. It wasn't like there was much of a story behind it. Chelsea Green, I will say this, though. Chelsea Green continues to be the most entertaining of all the women in these matches. And if her and Piper do not eventually win the tag team titles and they do introduce, and I believe they will in 2025, they will introduce a women's mid-card title, I think she would be a great candidate for it. I'm not saying I want to turn it into a joke belt, but Chelsea is that good. And her as a women's intercontinental champion, I think she is someone who a mid-card title would be tailor-made for. Seth Rollins pinned Bronson Reed. The wrong man went over here. That being said, they did as good of a job as you could possibly ask for in protecting him in defeat and putting Reed over as a monster if he was going to lose this match. But he should not have lost this match. Unless the idea is that Seth Rollins is going to be challenging Gunther for the World Heavyweight title at Survivor Series, which is entirely possible because Rollins is in a fatal 4-way match tomorrow night with Sheamus, Damian Priest, and Dominic Mysterio to crown a number 1 contender. Now, maybe Reed takes Seth out of the match. He costs him the match. But if Seth is going to win, and I think he's got to be the favorite, then yes, it makes sense that he would have won the match here at Crown Jewel. I would also, by the way, keep an eye on Finn Balor. In one of those Judgment Day segments last week, when they were talking about Dom possibly challenging for the world title, he had a look on his face like he wasn't too happy about it. So that could be something to watch for. Sheamus against Gunther again, yeah, of course it would be cool, but it's been done, I think, enough for now. I think it's either Rollins or Priest going over tomorrow night. These two here had a really good match. I hated Rollins no-selling that first Tsunami Splash, which they've been trying to get over for months as this devastating finish, and they have. They've done a very good job with that. Rollins took one in the first 2 minutes of the match, and then when Reed went back up for a second one, Rollins moved out of the way, which is fine, but he got right back up, and then he hit a stomp. Like he never even took the splash. I hated that. That's the one thing about this match I absolutely hated, even more than the finish and him losing. I hated that. Reed grabbed the steel steps later on. He tried to hit Rollins with them. Rollins swept his leg out. And so Reed fell face forward down into the steps, and I think that's where he cut himself open because he had a nasty gash above the eye when the match was over. Rollins followed with a stomp on the steps, so maybe it happened on the stomp. Reed climbed back into the ring to avoid a countout. Rollins immediately hit another curb stomp. Then he went up to the top rope and hit a super stomp. And he pinned Bronson Reed. And as Rollins was gingerly walking away, he turned and he saw Reed like a sea monster rising from the waters. He's back up to his feet. And we got this great visual of the blood from the eye streaming down his face. And he was motioning he wants more. And Rollins couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe what he was seeing, that this man was back up to his feet even after a super stomp. It took 3 stomps, including one off the top, to put the big man down. And even then, he was back up and bleeding, but he was asking for more. And Rollins also put him over big in his post-match promo. He said, we're going to do this again down the road at some point. If they were going to beat Bronson Reed, they tried to put him over as strong as they could, and they did a good job with it. But I still think the best way to put the guy over is to let him actually get a win over the former World Heavyweight Champion. The former champion who 5 days earlier took a Death Valley driver off the back of a truck and got sent to the hospital with a back injury, which I thought they would use as an out for Rollins losing here, but the back injury didn't even come into play. This dipshit came out dancing to the ring like he always does. I mean, why even shoot the angle? Now, maybe these two will eventually have a second match and Reed will win and they'll leave it at that. And they'll actually let Bronson Reed get out of this program with a win instead of then having to give Seth another win back. I mean, that would be nice, right? If they have a second match and Reed wins the second match and comes out of it a winner. I will be pleasantly surprised if it works out that way. But right now, I think that it would have been better off having him go over here in the first match. But if Rollins is going to wrestle Gunther, then you can't have Seth Rollins lose and then become number one contender for the world championship. So we'll see how things play out on Raw, but didn't take away from the fact that I enjoyed the match. I thought it was a very good match. We had Liv Morgan beating Nia Jax to become the first ever women's Crown Jewel champion. This was the worst thing on the entire show. It was heel against heel with no one for the fans to really root for, although they seem to like Liv more than Nia. It was all about waiting for Tiffany Stratton to run out with the briefcase, which she did 5 minutes into the match. I mean, they didn't even wait. I think the match itself went like 8 minutes, and it was maybe 5 minutes into the match, and all of a sudden we hear Tiffy time, and here she comes, running down to the ring. And she was about to cash in. Nia told her off, though, and said, "What are you doing?" And Stratton tried to claim that she was going to cash in on Morgan and not her. Nia told her to leave, and then Liv hit a crucifix bomb into a cover for a near fall, or she tried to anyway. She got the crucifix and she went down, but Nia landed right on top of her. And so Liv had to adjust to get Nia over onto her shoulders for the pin attempt. Stratton jumped up on the apron hoping to cash in on Liv. She got yanked down by Raquel Rodriguez. Morgan and Raquel, they end up cornering Tiffany on the outside. And Nia comes flying in. She squashes them up against the barricade. Nia sets up for the Annihilator in the ring. Dominic, meanwhile, is distracting the referee. Raquel then kicks Nia off the ropes, and Morgan hits Oblivion for the win. This was an overbooked mess. You know, if you're going to overbook a match, at least make it good. Like Cody and Roman at WrestleMania. That was fun. That was overbooked, and that was fun. This was not. After the match, Triple H presented the Crown Jewel title to Liv. The belt was bigger than she was. I thought she was going to tip over as she was holding this thing. Now, I predicted a Liv win, and I predicted no cash-in from Tiffany, so I wasn't surprised by any of this, but these constant cash-in teases, they're so played out at this point. I mean, how many more times are we going to see this? How many more months of this are we going to have to endure? I should also mention here that Rhea Ripley is injured again. She was not on this show. The NXT parking lot has claimed yet another victim. They filmed an angle that they aired on NXT where Liv and Raquel, we saw them running away from a car in the parking lot. And then we saw Rhea Ripley on the ground outside the car, bleeding from the eye. Rhea posted x-rays online showing, and they showed them here on the show too, they showed a fractured orbital socket, which is not a pleasant injury. So that was their way of writing her off television because it is a legitimate injury. Apparently she suffered it a few weeks ago. The belief is that it happened on the October 21st episode of Raw on a headbutt spot with Raquel and with Liv Morgan. Now she likely would have been wrestling Raquel at Crown Jewel, if not for the injury, which may have been why the four-way match was added for the women's tag team titles, because ain't no way they were going with 8 matches on that show. I can promise you that. I'm surprised that they scheduled 7. We technically only got 6 because Orton and Owens that never really got underway. But they scheduled 7 matches for this show, which is more than we usually see from Triple H on, you know, anything other than a WrestleMania or a SummerSlam. Usually it's kept at 5. So we probably would have gotten Rhea against Raquel. Rhea would have to beat Raquel. Once she does, then she could get her rematch with Liv. But it didn't work out that way. Now, Rhea already missed 3 months this year after WrestleMania with a shoulder injury. I don't know if she's going to need 3 months to come back from this one. Worst case scenario, I mean, she could wear the old Undertaker Phantom of the Opera mask that he wore in '95 when Mabel broke his orbital bone. It's not ideal. Rhea is the top star in the women's division. It's not ideal because it means that it drags out her feud with Liv even longer. I didn't see a way to extend this until WrestleMania, but I think they just found a way to extend it until WrestleMania if they want to. So if she can make it back in time for the Royal Rumble, she would automatically move up to number 1 on my list of favorites to win the Women's Rumble next year. And in the meantime, it's a chance for them to have 1 or 2 other women step up on the Raw side. They've got Io Sky, who would have been my choice before this to win the Women's Rumble if I could choose. You've got Lyra Valkyria. She's not doing anything right now. There's really not a lot of other great options on the babyface side, unless they break glass in case of emergency and they call Becky Lynch back because they think they need her. Liv is the one who retired Becky and beat her for the belt, so the story is there. But, to bring Becky back only to have Liv beat her again, that doesn't really serve any purpose in my eyes. They could have shaken things up and had Tiffany cash in on Liv at Crown Jewel, move her over to Raw, then build to Rhea against Tiffany. But, Liv's got a good thing going right now, and they don't want to disrupt that, at least not until Rhea can get her revenge, which, I get that. Apparently, and again, they're doing the tapings as we speak. So I'm not reading the spoilers anyway, but there's no spoilers here. But they are doing a battle royal, apparently, on Raw tomorrow night to crown a new number 1 contender for the women's title. I still feel like someone like Lyra is more likely to get the nod if they just need somebody in the interim, but I guess we'll find out in the Battle Royal who the number 1 contender is going to be. It's going to have to be somebody who they flew over there because they're taping it in Saudi, so it's possible, I guess they could fly in a surprise at the last minute, but it's going to have to be somebody who's already on the crew who they flew over there. Kevin Owens against Randy Orton. Never even got started. They had a brawl, not a match, but it was, I thought, what it needed to be. I liked the little touch of Owens walking out in a Cowboy Bob Orton t-shirt. Orton took about 7 years to make his entrance and pose, so Owens attacked him with a chair. I can't say I blame him. They immediately fought out to the floor. Then they ended up back in the ring where Owens stunned the referee. So here come officials. I saw Daivari was out there. The general managers came out. Orton ended up giving Adam Pearce, the Raw GM, an RKO. So there may be some hell to pay for him doing that. They brawled into the crowd. Orton ended up laid out on top of a table. Owens ran up some stairs, and then he ended up diving off the upper level with a flying elbow to put Orton through the table. And that's how it ended. After they showed a replay, they faded to black, and they cut to an ad. And it was on to the next. Disappointing if you were someone who was expecting an actual match. We didn't get the ding, ding, ding. But what we got was a brawl with Owens doing something to try to put Orton back on the shelf. I thought it might be an apron powerbomb. Talk about the surgically repaired back. We've seen Owens try to put people out with that powerbomb before. Instead, he did an elbow drop from one level up, put him through a table. If I had one critique, I don't know that Owens went far enough. Given the way Triple H was talking about him last Friday and how unhinged he is now, how unsafe he is, be careful. I thought that he would have done something a little more dastardly than this, but it gives them a reason to keep Orton off TV for a few weeks if that's what they want to do, and then they can set up Owens to challenge Cody again for the title at Survivor Series. LA Knight beat Andrade and Carmelo Hayes to retain the United States Championship in what was, up to this point, the best match on the entire show. And it turned out to be the second best match of the night behind the main event. I thought this was really good stuff. They kept a quick pace. They had some innovative spots for a three-way. And that's hard to do because it feels like everything's been done. Finally, Andrade and Hayes get a chance to shine without commercial breaks. Knight being added, he didn't hurt the match at all. I thought he hung with both these guys. The only slip up was on his running leap up on the on top that he does. He slipped and he crotched himself, and he had to no-sell it because it wasn't a planned spot. And you could tell when he was asked about it after the show, he was still hot about it. It was funny because Big E asked him. Big E was on the panel, and he asked him about his loins. Now, you don't normally walk up to another man and start asking him about his loins without some context there. And LA Knight did not know the context. He didn't realize he was asking him about the botched spot. He was probably hoping that it wouldn't get brought up. He probably wasn't very happy about Big E even mentioning it. He just thought Big E was asking him about his loins. He's like, what do you want to know? You want to know if they're tingling right now? And Big E is like, no, when you slipped on the ropes. And he wasn't happy about that. But, he recovered quickly and it was fine. I love the finish. Hayes set up for a facebuster to Andrade. Knight cuts in and he drops him with a BFT, but in the same motion, Hayes took Andrade down anyway for the move. And so then Andrade rolls away, Knight covers Hayes, and he pins him to retain the title. Great finish to a great match. Andrade and Carmelo now have lost to LA Knight in singles matches, and now here they have lost to him all at the same time. So they are done as far as being contenders for the U.S. title, and it is on to the next for LA Knight, whoever that might be. There is no obvious next challenger for him. And if ever there was a time for a Montez Ford singles run, especially a heel run, he would be a great choice. And he has not been shy about voicing his frustration with his spot in the company. He told the Daily Mail this week, for me to sit here and go like, how's it going? That it's good. That would be a lie. There's always pleasure in doing what you love, what you admire, what you've dreamt of. But it does get to that sense of frustration where anything you try to accomplish in life, where you may feel like it's either taking too long or it's been too long or nothing is happening. I'm not going to lie and say that I don't sit here and watch all the comments and everything. I watch everything. We're not in conversations when it comes to top tag teams. We're not in conversations when it comes to anything wrestling related besides the fact of getting handled by the Bloodline, and that doesn't sit well with me. So, as well as it's going in terms of being my dream job, it's as enjoyable as it is frustrating. This is the crossroads that I am at right now in life. Ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to be WWE champion. Now I've got the dream job I wanted, been with this tag team, and it's been fantastic. But I've also made a lot of changes and adjustments to try to be successful within this tag team. And I'm now at the point where I've done everything to be successful. I've tried to do something for a long time, and there's still no success. I'm looking at the universe. I'm trying to look at the signs. Is it time to adjust to a new era, a new mode, a new mindset, or do I need to start getting rid of people? I hope he's saying this out loud now as part of a story that they're going to tell on TV, but I don't want to give them credit for an idea that I might just be manifesting in my own head. That getting rid of people line, though, that stood out to me. If I'm Angelo Dawkins, I'm keeping this guy at an arm's length after that. And it was Cody Rhodes over Gunther to become the first ever men's Crown Jewel champion. Like the match that Gunther had with Randy Orton in Berlin, this was just a great professional wrestling match. There was no bullshit. There was no outside interference, which, Gunther doesn't typically have in his matches anyway, but I thought we might see Kevin Owens back out there. Nope. No Kevin Owens. The crowd was hot for it. Gunther kept trying for the sleeper that he put Cody out with at the end of SmackDown on Friday. He slipped out at one point, hit a crossroads. The shotgun dropkick and powerbomb with a stack by Gunther only got 2. Cody tried for a super Cody cutter, but Gunther caught him in midair in the sleeper. But Cody rolled over and trapped Gunther's shoulders, the old Bret Hart spot from WrestleMania 8, and he pinned Gunther to win the Crown Jewel title. Gunther pounded the mat in frustration because he knew he got caught. Only the second time that Gunther has been pinned since coming to the main roster. That is how well they have protected him so far. And if he was going to get pinned, at least he got pinned by the WWE champion. And it was a spot where he simply got caught. He wasn't beaten decisively. He wasn't pinned with a crossroads or 3, since apparently it takes 3 if you're Cody to beat most people on this roster, which is a sign that he needs a new fucking finish if it takes 3 of them to win. But nope, he didn't get beat that way either. He got caught. I mean, that's how Bret Hart used to beat guys. It wasn't always with a sharpshooter in the middle of the ring. He would get his ass handed to him and he would escape by the skin of his teeth. It's the same way he beat Piper in 92 and Austin in 96. He pinned Bam Bam Bigelow with a victory roll to win King of the Ring. He pinned the Bulldog in 95 with a La Magistral Cradle. Diesel in 95 with a small package at Survivor Series. Diesel was so frustrated he mouthed "stupid motherfucker" in clear view of the camera after he got pinned, which is something you didn't see back in 1995 WWF, I will tell you. But that's the kind of loss that it was for Gunther, and he knew it. And he confronted Cody after the match was over. He said something to him. We couldn't hear what it was, but they shook hands and Gunther left. So showing sportsmanship in defeat. He is honestly unlike any other top heel that I have ever seen in this company. It is so rare to find a top heel like that over the years in WWE. It's just not the way that Vince did it. Not that every heel was the chicken shit heel. I think most of them were, but even the tough heel, like they didn't act like this. If they did, if they showed sportsmanship, it was very, very rare. But that's one of the things that I love about Gunther and the way he's presented. Triple H was back out to present the Crown Jewel title to Cody, and they brought Liv Morgan back out with her belt so the two of them could pose together to some pyro. I thought she was going to fall over holding that thing. It has to be the biggest, most expensive championship they have ever created. And I'm sure the Saudis, they kicked in the money for it, I'm sure. I don't even want to speculate how much money these belts must cost. And you won't be seeing them again for another year because they're staying in Riyadh. They're going to be locked away in a vault, they said, until next year's Crown Jewel. But Cody and Liv, they got their own Crown Jewel rings to wear. Like a Super Bowl ring. Or the old WCW Battle Bowl ring. The less said about Battle Bowl, the better. I mean, who wouldn't want to see Brian Knobbs and Johnny B. Bad against... my God, who'd they... They were matched up randomly. I just saw this show a few weeks ago. Don't ask me why. Johnny B. Bad and Brian Knobbs randomly matched up against Eric Watts and Paul Roma. This show was much better than Battle Bowl. I bet you won't find that line in any other review this weekend that you're going to hear. But, like Battle Bowl, the Crown Jewel stuff was completely pointless. At least here, we got a great main event out of it. You know, again, I can't go thumbs down on this show, even though it wasn't really all that interesting to me. Because some of the wrestling was really good, and the Bloodline angle in the opening match with Sammy was well done. And that does forward one major story heading into Survivor Series.